Welcome to Zen Money Monday, weekly conversations with innovators, thought leaders, and entrepreneurial junkies about building good businesses, exploring what the idea of Zen money really means, and how to achieve it. With your host, author, business strategist, and Zen Money CFO, Liz Lajoie.
Okay. I am super excited, everybody, because I am on takeover mode of what is the actual, okay, redo.
We're not going to redo. We'll just make it funny. It's Zen Money Monday. Yeah, I guess we've gone through a couple different iterations in the back, behind the scenes as to what this show is called.
Because I wanted to say from zero to Zen, but it's Zen Money
Monday. Yeah, you're looking at my books behind me and
totally.
That's the title. Yeah.
Totally. And for those who are listening today, we are in huge celebration mode of Zen Money Monday because this is the 50th episode. And in honor of this tremendous achievement, I get to turn the tables on Liz Lajoie, who is one of my dearest and nearest friends in a cacophony of experience over the last 3.5 years, as we launched our businesses basically at the same time as we wrote our books. Yeah. And so we have traveled the entrepreneurial road together, like side by side. And even I'm in anticipation of this podcast, all you listeners, because I get to go into a candid version of Liz and get her nitty gritty back and behind the scenes, like what is really happening in the world of Zen Money with Liz.
I'm a little nervous. I thought it was a good idea, and now I'm second guessing it, but we're already rolling, so let's go with it.
Well, I do want to start because I don't know how many people know your backstory, right? And so you did start in corporate America, yes?
Your definition of corporate America, I don't consider it corporate America because I've also worked in big banks and stuff, but I do have a lot of small business management experience, which in the US is defined as like 19 million in revenue a year and under. So there's a really wide range there. But yes, bigger business than what most people that I usually work with are now, in the $2, $3, $4 million revenue kind of range.
But I think that there's a way, so to me, the corporate America represents like you got up in the morning, you got dressed in your nice clothes, you drove to an office, you represented the financial capacity of a company and came home to the family afterwards.
Yes. Yep. 100%. So yeah, before I started this business, I spent about a decade as a business manager for a local engineering firm. And in that role, as business manager in a business like that, I was the and everything else girl, which meant, yes, I was our CFO, but I was also responsible for hiring and HR management and marketing and operations and making sure that everybody was set up ergonomically in a correct fashion at their desk and made sure that overtime was understood and all of those things. So, I'm making noise all over the place here. So from my perspective, I'm lucky because my experiences, and before that I worked with a family-owned company with my family as an operations manager for a medical manufacturing firm. And I've had experience in corporate banking and all kinds of various things. So I've been really lucky because I've gotten to see a lot of different versions of business, which has made this version of my business pretty helpful.
Well, I can see how that might be helpful, especially in terms of learning so many different components of a business, like all these different, what's the word I want to say, sectors, like whether it's HR, whether it's, customer service and retention, whether it's the financial, like you really did get the whole kit and caboodle.
I did, and it worked really well for me because my brain, I like to look holistically. You know this about me. I like to look at the bigger picture and kind of see how all the puzzle pieces fit together. My brain works well that way in terms of being able to come in and say, I think my creativity is really driven by it being able to look at a current situation and then see sort of the straightest line to streamlining or cleaning it up or taking a new idea and implementing it. And as opposed to like, I have a blank page in front of me and I will just create out of nothing. That's not really my creative MO. But what's interesting about it is I think a lot of us like to think about business or big business in particular. We tend to think in terms of very siloed you're an HR expert, or you work in customer service, or you are a marketing person, and then that's it. And they never see kind of the rest of the business. I found when I was working in bigger businesses, I got frustrated with that because I need to have the whole picture. So small business is really a good fit for me.
I was going to say something there, like what is like the yay or nay on like being in control of all the other like departments, so you don't have any middlemen you have to deal with, and like being able to do what you want to do versus like having the support?
Oh, it is all about control, isn't it? I mean, that's the psychological side of it that I know you'll dig into here in a second. But I think for most of the people that I work with now, the kinds of clients, and I know that you have a lot of similar based clients, regardless of how big a team you might have, if you are the CEO, or if you're in upper management, or if you're the founder, then it's really important to understand, or at least have an idea of where you want things to go. And all of those back end kind of operational behind the scenes pieces really need to be looked at, all together cohesively, or you end up, having somebody focusing in one area of your business here, but they're not talking to the person who's over on the other side. And then, you have a lot of disconnect. You might spend a lot more money than you want to spend. You don't necessarily grow the way that you want to grow. So I think it's useful, but I do think a lot of us, myself included, fall into the I'm interested, I'll learn it, and therefore it's hard to hand off to someone else because it's just like, oh, it's just easier if I do it myself, which is, rule number one in actually being a leader versus a manager, is not to micromanage at that level.
Well, and I mean, like, what happened that had you leave a 10-year company and start your own business?
If I'm being completely honest, well, okay, so I have two answers to this. One is a personal answer, which is that many of you know that I have been dealing with chronic Lyme disease since 2012. And so I was trying to maintain my seat at the table as the only female in leadership, the only non-technical partner in our firm, and try to be, raise kids who are small and finish my MBA and be sick all at the same time. And it all just sort of imploded at a certain point and wasn't sustainable. So that's the personal side, but it's also part of, quite honestly, what I now have to just chalk up to being a woman in a technical field. There were some decisions that my partners, made that were to my detriment and not to theirs. And after time, it just really became untenable for me to be there, thankfully, because if that hadn't gotten to such a bad place, because it was my version of the golden handcuffs, if it hadn't gotten to such an uncomfortable, unhealthy, from an emotional, workload standpoint, I probably would still be there and making decent money, but really not, truly happy. So I'm pretty happy that it turned out as it did, but at the time it was quite painful.
I want to actually dig a little deeper here, because I think that a lot of your listeners may even be currently in that space of these golden handcuffs that you speak of. Can you define that out for people who may not know and can categorize or raise their hand if it's them?
I think we think of it as a really good, well-paying job that has good benefits, that makes it difficult to think about making a major life shift or a career shift, because it's, the unknown is scary. And especially if you're thinking about making the shift from somebody paying you to you started your own company, right? I mean, entrepreneurship and small business ownership is not to be done lightly. It's really takes a lot out of you, not just financially, but mentally and emotionally, and stress on your family. And, that's a shift that a lot of people aren't comfortable making. And, I come from a long line of entrepreneurial people, as you know, but I still wasn't comfortable thinking about jumping ship without, having something of a safety net or something mapped out beforehand. So, that was part of my exit strategy. My unintentional exit strategy included sort of testing the waters to see if I could utilize some of the expertise that I had gained over the years and start helping other businesses in addition to, the one that I was going to a job for.
So 2 things. One, you are already working extraneous hours, right, for this company?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm the kind of person, and maybe everybody else can agree or can feel like this as well. I've always worked like I was an owner, right? That's just been part of who I am in any organization that I've been in. If I'm there, and I'm all in because I care about my work and I want to be involved. And because of that, I've had a lot of growth opportunities. I've had higher education paid for. I've been invited into leadership. That is, I think, a testament to my ability to just show up and say, all right, let's go. Where are we going? Let's go. Let's figure it out. But because of that, it also means that, you work a lot and you work at all hours of the night. And it was never like I'm clocked in at 9 o'clock and I clock out at 5 o'clock and, my brain isn't engaged in between times. It was on all the time, which, all of which led to my getting sick in the first place. I am 100% sure.
Well, and I really want to highlight this because I think that this is something that a lot of people do find themselves in the whirlwind of evening working and business, weekend working, whether you are working for a company, you're self-employed, you're an entrepreneur, you're all of that, right? Like losing our boundaries, if you will. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is the second thing that you said there is that even though you were already working these extraneous hours, you still above and beyond that, before you even made this decision, was like, why don't I spend a little more time over here? I'll take on some like extra work to sample whether this is something that I want to do. So what was that time period like when you were working basically 2 jobs?
I never felt like 2 jobs because it was pretty low grade. And it wasn't, looking back, it feels like it was really calculated. It was not calculated at all. It was more of a, this is where like the start of my own intuitive journey came about, I guess. No, I started, I was doing some work for some of my family's companies, just kind of on the side in terms of financial management and kind of feedback and helping clean up a few projects here and there. And then that morphed into, I was on a trip for work to a conference to a city where some of my best friends from college lived. So I took a couple extra days over a weekend and spent some time with them. And one of those friends had, recently opened up his own psychiatric practice. So we were talking about his business and the struggles they were having. And then they were like, do you want to help us with this? I was like, oh, sure, that'd be fun. And then that went well. And then somebody else came in from a similar kind of way. And I was like, oh, all right, well, good. Now I don't feel so completely restricted and constricted about what my future might look like, which was good.
Okay, I'm gonna get this like out of the way for those listening, because Liz is my financial fairy godmother. That's what I have labeled her 3 years ago. As soon as I met her, I was like, oh, please help me, right? As somebody who is not great with finances, but like the part that gets me, the part that blows my mind, Liz, is like, you find everything that you do fucking easy. Like all of this financial landscape stuff, like you're just like, yeah, like it takes you no time. It's just like, this is my vision of how it works for you.
I don't know if that's entirely true. It didn't used to be like that. That is just decades and decades of like numbers crunching experience, right? I mean, I couldn't have done this even 10 years ago. I mean, I could have started to do it 10 years ago, but 20 years ago, like, I had to learn the hard way, the same way that everybody else did. And then I got formal schooling as well, which helped layer on top of that. But most of it was just experience and watching what worked in certain businesses and what didn't, and what, the importance of how useful it is when you have clean books and you have clean numbers and you have information to then be able to do what I find fun, which is the strategery stuff, and saying, okay, where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? How do we make sure pricing doesn't freak us out? How do we, all of that stuff that we kind of like to put the lid on and not focus on as much.
I just think it's like you find all the money stuff in the like aspiring of the money and the putting it all together in this beautiful profit loss sheet, all very fascinating.
Because it tells a story. That's what I've learned in 20 years, right? That stuff isn't just numbers on a page. It's, if you look at it as a storytelling device, I think it's far more engaging, frankly. But yeah, it comes with experience, and it's not a piece that everybody wants to become that level of expert at, and you certainly don't need to become that level of expert at. But it is useful to at least have some of those pieces in place so that you can move forward. I mean, I think you've seen that in our work together in terms of really being able to plan well now.
Yeah, there's a day we didn't know was coming. I just want to share, like, when I first met Liz 3.5 years ago, I want to get back to Liz. Like, I glazed over with every conversation that we had about money. Like, that's how avoidant I was in terms of wanting to even acknowledge my financial landscape. For those that are listening who are this person, there is hope for you still. And yet, and beyond what you could ever possibly imagine. But going back to this place, what was the biggest catalyst that had you make the shift? Was it that work in my version of corporate became too much to handle? Or was it that the side gig became so much more like juicy and enticing? Like, what was
actually. The real catalyst was because I finally got my Lyme diagnosis 3.5 years after I got sick. And when that happens, it allowed me to kind of say, okay, this version of me kind of trying to quote unquote get back to normal isn't feasible. This is going to be a really long recovery process. I need to have flexibility in my life. I need to not have to get up at, whatever, dark 30 and take a shower and put on uncomfortable clothes and go to an office. Not that our office was particular. I mean, we live in northern New Hampshire. We're pretty whatever. But even so, like, I couldn't roll out of bed in my pajamas and get work done, really. I needed some more autonomy, and I needed not to have the stress of that work relationship and what it had become hanging over my head. And so some of it was choice on my side. Some of it was just sort of perfect storm timing on my business side. I mean, my partnership side. And it just came to a point where I was like, you know what, this is actually best for everyone involved if I step out of that scenario. And it allowed me to focus on. And so then I was like, oh, now I need to make this work because, I still need to earn some money. So I had a few pieces in place, but then officially stepping out of my engineering role allowed me to say, what do I want this business to be? What does the online space look like? And then I started learning really, really fast because I needed to make it happen.
So where was it in the journey after you decided to step forward to like really start to listen to your physical body, which is a huge indicator? I mean, our physical body basically tells us that you decided to write your first book?
Not long after. Yeah. So you and I met probably 3 months, maybe 3 months after I was officially done. So we both enrolled in a program to write books with the Author Incubator, and that started really fast. So that was December of 2016, I guess.
Yeah. So now we're on the journey of basically 3 years, just over 3 years, to get to where you are now. So if we go back to the Liz who started the business, it's December 2017, and you 16. Are 16. I mean, yeah. And you're like, I want to work in this field. I want you to literally take me back
I'm going to be totally honest here because it sounds so like energetic and like, I'm so excited. Here's what was all going on. Okay. So the Lyme thing was like, okay, if I'm being completely honest with everybody, it all started because I was like, well, I don't know what this recovery is going to look like. I have felt like shit for 3.5 years. It's not clear what and if that's ever going to change or how. At the very least, I could be an online bookkeeper from flat on my back in bed with my eyes shut. I could do that. So that's stuff that you're like, you do it so fast and you just don't know. I'm like, yes. Like, that's not my zone of genius, but I can do that. And I could make some money doing that. I knew I could.
Yes.
So that's really how it started. I was like, what is the easiest thing for me to do right now that isn't going to take a whole lot of time and energy other than trying to like talk to new people? And so that's how it all started. That's not really what the core of what we bring to the table is anymore, I don't think, but that's where it started.
Well, and I think that this is where I want to get to where we evolve to when we have a business. Like where we actually begin our businesses is hilariously like disproportionate to like where we end up years later, right? And so like I really think it's really valuable to get to this like initial piece. Like that was your thought. I could lie in bed, I could punch these numbers, which is the part that I think is crazy. You find so easy is the bookkeeping part. I'm like, you could do it with your eyes closed. And, to sustain my physical body being healthy.
Yep. That's how it all started.
And so when you went to write your first book, this is fun too. What did you actually think you were going to write your book about?
I wrote my book what I thought I was going to write my book about.
Did you?
So this was the moment of clarity, because this was at a time where I was like, I'm looking around the online space. I'm like, okay, and this is still true today, 4 years later. It seems like having a book is a great calling card. Let's go that route, right? So I was like, I've always liked to write. It's, I've always had a creative bent, but for so many years, I wasn't really exploring it because I was spending all of my time with type A analytical men at work. And my husband, who Scott, is a lovely physics teacher and weather nerd. So I then came home to a type A analytical man. And that was like the sum total of my social interaction. So I was and when you can attest to this, when we first met, I was very left brain oriented, heavy maybe. So part of what was fun about the writing process was to start to get back into my own creativity and having fun with language and those things that I've always loved to do, but somehow kind of gone by the wayside between having a career and getting, my MBA and having kids and all the other things. So I intended the book was what I intended it to be, which is my first book, From Zero to Zen, is a primer of sorts around, just what are the things that we need to do for our business to be healthy? What do we have to worry about? What do we not have to worry about? How do we make sure that we're taking care of receipt management and thinking about taxes and, pricing strategies and all of that kind of behind the scenes stuff that we have to decide that sometimes kind of just gets handed to us, right? We go and we learn something from someone and we're like, oh, there's a template. I'll just apply that to myself. And it may or may not fit, it may or may not feel right. So that was what the first book was about. It was really just like, how do you get your ducks in order around finances, contracts, all that good stuff.
And when you were writing that book, is that how you started working with clients in the beginning?
Yeah. So I started working with clients. So I had a couple who I was doing some bookkeeping with. And then I had some who were interested in getting set up on QuickBooks, for example. One of the first things I did was I was like, well, if I'm doing anything financial, I should probably become a QuickBooks Pro advisor. So I went out, got that certification and set myself up and I was done. And then you think like, I've got this thing, everyone will just start come knocking on my door. Of course, that's not what happens in business building, because it turns out it's a very different thing to grow a business from scratch versus being able to walk into an established business and then help it grow from there. So this has been a really fun learning. Like partly I always feel a little like, I don't really know what I'm talking about. I have all this experience, but this is my first business that I've truly grown from nothing. And that's just a different endeavor than coming in and seeing kind of established, learning from what's already been established and then, working to make it better.
So under the premise that clarity comes with movement, and under the guise that you did come in working on the bookkeeping and looking at, this, you did create a program right away. Is this true, to support like people launching their businesses?
Yeah. So what led up to my book, because as you know, the person that we wrote books with very much believes that, if you want to be doing coaching or training or i.e. sell yourself as an expert, putting it into kind of the program model is good. And what I've been doing leading up to that was basically the same thing, but kind of on a one-on-one basis where people were coming and saying, hey, I could use some help in this area. And so I would work with them, often get them set up and like get their books cleaned up and then use their own books to train them on how to do it themselves, or at least have it clean so they could take it and move it along. Or sometimes they would say, this is great, now can you just take care of it for me? So that's sort of that done for you arm of the business was growing. But at the same time, I was really interested in being able to help people deal with learning and then also managing the thoughts, feelings, and emotions, as you like to say, around the process of learning more about your money management. Because it turns out the mindset stuff is huge. I had no idea, but it is.
How long do you think it took you to know that it was a huge idea? Like that was a huge part of it?
The very first online program I took, because when I was like, okay, I'm going to try and work in this space, I need to learn something about it. So I took Jenny Shee's Make It Work Online program in the fall of 2016. This was right before you and I met. And everybody in that program were coaches and service providers. And, you know, my experience is people who sell their brains for a living. And that's where I feel really comfortable being able to give advice. And so there were all these people who I could look at their business and say, yeah, what about blah, 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 you know, A, B, and C, let's talk about these things. And I'm listening to them talk about their stress points and their pressure points in terms of trying to grow their business in the online space. It wasn't really a financial conversation specifically. And every single one of them, when we met, you know, virtually, or I don't like that word virtually, when we met online through Zoom or whatever, would say, you know, always some version of like, oh, I'm the worst ever, you know, around money, or they would be obviously gnarled up when somebody was talking about raising their prices, or, you know, it's just, that became apparent really, really quickly, which is, I think, you know, unintentionally where the whole Zen conversation came in for me and why that got tied into the book, because the more people that I was around who were trying to work in the online space, who were smart in what they were doing, but trying to figure out this business building stuff, we're so gnarled up around this piece of the puzzle, and it's the piece of the puzzle. And yet for some reason, we want to focus on branding or our marketing or having the perfect sales pitch. And that stuff is important too, obviously, because if we're not talking to people, then nobody's coming in the door. But your financial foundation is pretty important because we all want to make money, and yet we don't want to talk about it. And I found that fascinating.
Well, I think that the other external stuff seems really glossy, right? Like if you like
shiny
the front face stuff that people will be attracted to before you even think, like, if I don't have these things, then the people aren't going to pay me money, right? Like the back ass kind of thought process here.
We all do it.
But I think that what I want to hear from you is, in the last 3.5 years, how many iterations of like your business have you actually had?
It's always evolving. I want to say at least 4, but really probably more, because I feel like every few months, everybody kind of goes through this cycle of, is that the right fit? Is that the right way to offer it? Is this the right way to do the work? My biggest struggle, which I talk to a lot of people about, because I think a lot of people who are in service-based businesses who support other businesses have the same issue, which is, you know, I really want to be able to talk to more people or work with more people, but it feels like everyone wants to come to you and just have you take care of it. So I've struggled a lot going back and forth between, you know, how do we position the Zen Money Initiative and the work that we're doing and be able to really be in a business like I'm in your business, for example, and that's a really fun relationship and I love that, but I only have so much bandwidth for being able to be a part-time CFO for different companies, for example, and also having this real drive to be able to want to help people get over that fear, and with just a little bit of learning, you know that they can take their business to a higher level and maybe don't necessarily become a done for you long-term client. And so finding that balance continues to be a struggle for me, and I think it does for a lot of people.
And so I'm gonna come back, because like it's true, right? Like we have had this like back and forth, you and I, because one of the biggest parts of your back end business too is, and it's not something that I think you've talked about, is the iterations of your business do have a cyclic nature to them.
Yes.
Because of
all the other things in life besides my business, of course.
Well, because it hasn't been a straight, easy line with your line either.
No. I feel like I lost the year of 2019, part of 2020. So Yeah, it's really been a journey for me in terms of what my brain and my, success oriented self wants and, can strategize and put on paper and say, okay, we're just going to do all the things. And then if my energy tanks or I have a really bad, several months of flare up, well, that kind of goes out the window. So what I've worked on a lot is finding, what is the baseline that allows me to do this business, but not get so wrapped up in the, business building work stuff, because that's like totally lights me up. But it comes at the detriment sometimes of my own health and my family and all the things that I was, so I've gone through iterations where I've been like, hey, look what I've figured out how to create. I just recreated that, shitty work environment that I left 3 years ago. Maybe we should revise this a little bit. So, I think that if anybody has had something similar in looking through, however many years of business you've been in, I think it's just true. And the reality is, the businesses that I worked in before I started my own business, the same thing would happen. There's always some version of cyclical leadership nature as well, right? So sometimes things go along and they're running too well. And you're like, I got to shake it up because now I'm bored, or there must be something else, right? And that's not actually necessarily true. Sometimes it just causes chaos and disorder for all of your staff. But then the flip side is also true, which is in my case, which is, I've set myself on a path of working too much or having to outlay too much energy to keep this version going, and I can't sustain it. And so, that's been the balancing act for me. And it's a never-ending lesson, as you know.
But I think like it's a true testament to what's possible. Like, as somebody who has witnessed you and, been, hand in hand with you in some form, on some level through the last 3.5 years, like, it's inspiring, Liz. Like, you are inspiring. I just want you to acknowledge and hear this, because having like Lyme disease, which I'm trying to find that like autoimmune or something that is consistent, it doesn't go away. And yet your capacity to serve, to show up for us, to, there's a level of like, I'm on the list. And I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. The love that you have for your clients, the container that you hold for us, even on days maybe when you don't feel as great as everybody else in the world.
Oh, I'm trying to just accept that, because my gut wants to be like, yeah, sure, everybody does that. We were having a conversation earlier about, all those things that you think that everybody does just as easily as you do it. And I think that is one thing that I, rightly or wrongly, because it's not always the best choice, it's just sort of an inherent drive, from a work ethic standpoint. But I also find work is a good distraction personally. When I'm physically like not feeling great, it's not easy for me to sit with that. And so it's easier to just dive in and take care of something for somebody. But also, I just like to be able, if somebody's going to trust me with this part of their business, then I don't take that lightly. And it's, it's an important thing for me to be able to show up. So.
Well, as one of your clients, I'm just like showering you in gratitude right now.
Thank you.
So let's talk about one of my curiosities.
Oh, no.
Because I think that in my head, I create stories about like your other clients, because I am one of them. And to me, there's two types.
You always wonder, like, what's going on over there?
Right? Like, so I'm the client that, again, does not have a financial background, does not have a financial like capacity when we first met, who's just like, money will appear and I'm going to buy all the things and do all these kinds of things. I'm not a saver, I'm a spender. I'm like, go for whatever, I'll make the money. Versus like clients who are more like squirrels and like collect their money and make very, very specific decisions. What would you say the balance between the two of us are?
I think that's a really great question, because in fact, I was just having a conversation about this with my family, because my husband is very much a squirrel. He will not mind my saying that out in public landscape. He's very, very frugal. And I was having a conversation with our kids about, because my daughter's a saver as well. And she made some comment about like, I'm just going to earn all the money and just keep it. I'm like, what's interesting and what I've learned is that this is where the woo stuff comes in. Money likes to move. And there does need to be some version of flow to really feel like you're making progress. And so most people listening, or probably all the people listening, are business owners and entrepreneurs. And I guess the balance is having the ability to make strong choices, but not the fear to restrict yourself necessarily just for the sake of saving or for not, for being afraid to play bigger. I think there's ways to utilize money and spend money strategically without putting yourself in the poorhouse. And then there's also ways to let yourself loosen up a little and just recognize, for me, like I could chug around at this level, squirreling away my money. And if you're happy with that, awesome. But if you have bigger dreams, if you want to hit high 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, like which many people have, these big numbers game dreams, then we can't just sit on all the money either, right? There has to be some kind of, we need to take it and apply it somewhere or invest it in some way to grow the business too.
So would you say that your clients do come into one of these two extremes when you meet them, and then you bring us on a journey to this middle ground?
I have found that to be true. I was talking with a client who originally came in from my very first From Zero to Zen program in the summer of 2017. And I now work with her long-term and actually help her teach her clients some stuff and things like that. And she phrased it in terms of, I felt like I always made like intuitive gut decisions about my spending. And that was okay. But it's so much nicer to also be able to layer on a very systematic, analytical approach to further enhance those decisions. So she's basically saying she feels way much more confident in how she's navigating her money because she can have both sides. And I think that's one thing that I can bring to the table, is just helping provide that, kind of mirror to say, hey, it doesn't matter what you want to do. You can make these choices. It's my job to just sort of help you outline what the possible outcome and ramifications of those are going to be. Because, if we spend money here right now, it's not going to allow us to do these things on the other side. And maybe that's the right choice, but I want you to be able to see the whole picture to make it.
What is your favorite part about working with small business owners and entrepreneurs about money?
Strategery, planning. That's where things are fun for me. I'm great at taking care of books, and I'm also great at having other people on my team do that work, because what's really fun for me is taking all of that data and information and being able to play it back in various scenarios so that we can make strong decisions. And then the very most fun part is being able to then look back and say, hey, we planned for A, B, and C, and look, it happened 2 months sooner than we thought it was going to. Or yay, let's celebrate that win from yesterday or last week. That's really the most fun part for me.
And like, how far in advance do you love to plan?
I think it's, some people I think it really depends on the person. I try to meet clients where they are, and I have some clients who are like, I need a 5-year plan. And that's a really important distinction for them. So we work kind of in terms of what's our immediate next 12 months versus 3 years versus 5 years. I think that's most useful when you get into like the 3, 5, 10, 12 year plans for people. That becomes more important as your business has grown and been around longer, and then you're talking about exit strategies and things like that. I think that for most of where my clients are right now, which is in the 3 to 7 years in business, and they're kind of looking to get up to that next level, that's really sort of the sweet spot for our long-term clients. That planning is really beneficial in the 18 months out model. But then on a very granular level, we look 13 to 16 weeks out from a cash flow standpoint to make sure that we're not going to get caught short. Or you've done this process with me a million times, where we look and say, hey, okay, based on what we have booked right now and recurring payments and all of that, and what you want to spend, it looks like in 5 weeks or so, we might need to you need to be targeting to get some extra new sales in the next 3 weeks, because then we won't be caught short.
Right. Which I also Never thought I would enjoy those conversations and do. What is your least favorite part about working with people and money?
Oh, I don't like to say anything bad about the work that I do with people. Okay, so two things. One, I would say that my least favorite part is working with somebody who really just doesn't truly want to make the effort or the shift. I've definitely worked with people who I saw a big vision and big potential for them, but I knew that it was going to take them truly engaging in their business and in this way for them to get there. And they were so blocked, right? Because there was so much mindset and money stuff. And people call me a coach, and you know what? I don't feel particularly qualified to do that. I mean, I think I do sort of intuitively, but if somebody has some really deep money blocks, I think I feel less capable of managing that, which is my own issue probably more than reality. But I think the version that works really well for me is, people who want to be able to see this more clearly and understand that I also can't be their savior, right? Because I can't take all of that on.
Well, and I think this is a testament to that you do have the analytical brain. You are the capacity to take the big picture and refine it into a path that we can understand and see. So like the nonsensical, and I'm saying that with great love because I'm an energy worker, the energy of money is much different than the landscape of money. They are too, because from my perspective, give me the fucking money stories, right? But don't give me the people who want to know their forecasting. So it makes sense that would be kind of like a contrast feeling for you.
And I shouldn't necessarily say that I don't like, it's not the worst part about my job. It's the place where I feel the least strong, right? And I am all of the, personality types, right? I come up as sage, and I come up as, support person, and I come up with all these personality types that basically say that I like to sound like I know what I'm talking about. So
INFJs for the win.
Yeah. So when I get into stuff that I don't feel quite as confident around, then that freaks me out a little bit. But that, on the other hand, I've had plenty of people too who are just like, you have helped me so much with my mindset and how to think about this. In my mind, it's not about mindset directly. It's more about, look, if we can clearly just do these few things and look at this straight on instead of shying away from it, a lot of that mindset stuff goes away, and a lot of the discomfort, because we're just afraid, tends to fall by the wayside too.
Which is, again, I'm just going to tack on one of your strengths, right? Because you're able to, from my perspective as being in the energy realm, create a different result for the subconscious mind to actually say, I can do that. Because we can't break a pattern until we prove a new result to our mind. And that is where you exceed your capacity to serve. Like, how many times have you had somebody like me or somebody on the other spectrum that you were able to like really get us to a different place in terms of how we show up in our money portfolios?
Yeah, that's the best part of my job, for sure. To be able to look at that and say, oh, I made a difference for that person. That's great.
So I'm going to ask a question that I'm sure nobody's asked you before. Will you share your business money story over the last 3.5 years?
Oh boy, sure. So the caretaking part of it, what I call the ticky-tacky part of it, is not an issue for me. I know how to do this with my eyes closed. That part isn't hard. The hard part for me is the same things that's hard for everybody, right? It's being really confident in being able to stand firmly in my pricing strategies and dealing with all of that bear brain and all that mindset work, and selling, which is hard for a lot of us, and feeling like, how do I show up in a way that feels good to me, that isn't somebody else's model, that feels like it's too much work. And you and I have talked a lot about me you've helped me stay on track with really needing to be clear about what is worth my time and energy and still feels fun. So I think my biggest work in building this business has been coming around to finally around, oh, right, this is supposed to be fun. Let's make this as entertaining as possible. And I think that I'm in a pretty good spot around that now. But I think, the business money part, that's hard, like it is with anybody, relationship stuff is tricky. I'm married to someone who is not particularly risk happy. And to be a business owner, you have to be pretty risk happy in some ways. You don't have, I mean, you're not like all over the place, but you know, you still have to be willing to take some chances. And that's a challenge in terms of how much I share about my business and the decisions I'm making at any given time with my spouse, for example, or anybody else in my life. Because as I said, I have plenty of people who have businesses in my family who love to give advice. And that's not always a good thing to take if you don't want to get all snarled up, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think I have the same business growth trajectory that most people have, except that I have this added layer of, I think I should know better. I'm supposed to be special somehow. No.
And, you know, in this growth capacity, you did mention that 2019 was a challenging year. Did you have increase in revenue, then drop to rise back up? Like in terms of the revenue of your company, how's it gone?
2020 has been a crazy year. It turns out that COVID is not as dire for some kinds of companies as others. And so people in the online space, which is primarily my clientele, have often done very well, including some people who are now at like 200 times revenue from where, you know, 2x revenue from where they were last year.
I don't know if this is video, but I'm giving myself some
I have one client who's 350% higher in profit this year. Like, so that all makes me feel good. And also, you know, makes me feel like I have job security. But yeah, 2019 was a lot of, you know, again, trying to figure out the right clientele, right? So I went through a phase where I was offered, there were two clients in particular where this happened with, where through referrals, I was able to come in. I had the opportunity to come in into much bigger businesses and higher revenue businesses as like the full financial team. We were going to take care of bookkeeping and then CFO level stuff and all of that. Like really great contracts, but the nature of what's really important to me is to be able to work with business owners and CEOs who want to have an long-term relationship, a meaningful relationship with me. And that's what I've learned over the years too, because I've taken on clients where the contract looked great, the money looked great, but the relationship was sort of the like, just take care of it. I don't want to talk about it. That is not interesting to me at all. It's the wrong energy all over the place, if we want to talk about energy. And it really just put me back into that place that I was in my previous partnerships, where it was like, you just take care of shit. We're not going to feel good about what you're doing. And we'll just, you know, be quiet there in the corner by yourself. I don't want to have those relationships, and I don't have to. I have plenty of clients who love working with me in a long-term, you know, high level basis. And so that's been fun for me to realize, oh, I don't have to recreate this the way that I've known it in the past. I can actually pick and choose who my clients are, which I think all of us, it takes a while to get to that stage of financial security and having kind of seen enough renditions and iterations in your business to then say, I can say no to this. I don't have to jump through somebody else's hoops because it's not worth it. And when you start out, you really feel you do, because like any money, I got to get all the money coming in anytime, right? Mm-hmm. We all go through that. And then it's really irritating to get coached by somebody who isn't in that space, because they all sound so like, go ahead and sneeze. I know you want to.
I muted myself though.
That was awesome. You know, but I think this is actually one of the bigger things that I struggle with, because I've been in that place too, where I feel like somebody who's maybe at a next stage in business or who has a different level of experience in a different realm, you know, there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of people wanting to teach other people about how to grow a good business. And I try to be very careful not to talk down too much, because there are a gajillion ways to do this. And I don't need to make anybody else feel crappy about what stage they're in, or because they made a choice that wasn't my model, you know?
Well, and I think that, dissecting this, I think this is, you and I were just talking about this right before we actually pressed record, is that 3.5 years into our business, we are redefining our ideal client over and over and over again as we grow and as we learn and as we traverse this entrepreneurial world. Where you started is not who you want to work with now. Where I started is not where I'm working now. And it's that journey of like, I loved that you actually said there, right? That you tested something last year. You thought, hey, maybe this is the right fit for me. And then went, no, hard no, not the yes, but the willingness, right? To try new things, to reach out and expand yourself, only to learn more about what is the right fit for you. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's powerful. So big question, what's next for Liz Lajoie and, the Zen Money Initiative?
One big win. We have our trademark, yay, for Zen Money. That came in officially a couple of months ago. So that's always entertaining, which is, I need to do another podcast episode all about the pros and cons of that, because I don't believe that's necessary. But it makes me feel like I have to now do something with Zen Money officially. But right now, by the time this airs, we'll be in the very beginning of October. And I'm really focusing right now on my training programs, because as I said, it's something that really sings to me, but I haven't quite figured out the puzzle yet. And in the past, those have felt like, if I'm going to put this energy in, then I've really got to scramble and I don't really quite know how to put this all together. I think I've seen enough versions through my clients and through my own learning that I'm feeling really good about, kind of having different offerings in that learning arm of the business. And so that's really where I'm focusing right now. Our done for you services stuff is still going along. It's always been built on referrals and all of that. So that just continues to do its thing, which is great. And that fulfills a lot for me. But then also being able to figure out how to speak meaningfully to share learning, because I'm an educator at heart, let's be honest. From back in the day when I was teaching English in Prague to all the way up through today, it's something that really, really is meaningful for me to be able to take people through a process and to watch them feel really good by the end of it. So that's really what my focus is right now, building out from zero to Zen. And then the next iteration of the Zen Money Map process. So that's what we'll be looking at.
And you do love speaking to other people's communities about Zen Money as well. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? If anyone were listening and be like, oh, having Liz Lajoie come and speak to my group would be pretty banging.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So I've been doing a lot more speaking this year too. And it's fun because we can do, small group trainings, or, I've been on a couple of stages virtually now, most recently. And, and I think everybody really resonates with this conversation. I hit on something with the Zen Money thing because we all want it to feel good and easy, and it really can. And we can have it be that way with just a few tweaks. So having some more speaking opportunities is always fun as well, because it is nice to engage with new communities about this and be able to answer people's questions and hopefully help.
And if you could be like, I'm not getting to your last question yet. If there's things that you're like, man, Tamara, I just want to tell my listeners this, because you didn't ask me this question and I think this is super important for them to hear, what would it be?
This doesn't have to be that hard. And this is not just the financial management part or the back, behind the scenes part. I think you've all heard me say that, my goal is to help people make their business insides feel as good and as beautiful as their business outsides. But it isn't just about that. It's about, we wrangle ourselves up a lot around our business building, and it doesn't have to be that hard. It really can be just a step at a time, one foot in front of the other. And then all of a sudden you turn around and go, oh, wait, I am making the 5-figure month that I wanted, or the whatever that number is, that's great for you. It's totally feasible. The funny thing about that is that we forget to stop and celebrate, right? Because we set the goal and then we hit the goal. But by the time we hit the goal, our sights are already 4 miles down the road. And so that's the other thing that I would like everybody to remember, which is just celebrate the shit out of the accomplishments that you've already created, because this is not an easy thing to do, whether you're sick or healthy or have kids or don't or whatever. right? Building a business of any shape or size takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of focus. So if you've done, if you're still here, you're doing something really well.
And then I'll get to your question, which is, what does Zen money mean to you, Liz Lajoie?
It's funny because I ask all of my people this question, right? So I felt like I had to ask myself it as well. And sometimes I listen to the answers and I'm like, it's all kind of the same thing in different words. And sometimes the packaging is like fancier than others. But really, for me, it all started because, again, I knew that it didn't have to be this hard, that there was the ability, like just a little bit can get you to a point of feeling really balanced. And of course, I was playing on words there because balance and balance sheet and all the financial stuff. But it just, Zen money to me means peace and power, like being really empowered in your decision making, in your choices, not wondering if you're doing the wrong thing every other minute, not wondering if the shoe's going to drop or if you're going to miss your mortgage payment. Right? That's Zen money, knowing that it's, how to get it, you know what to do with it once it comes in the door, and you're not feeling, grabby or out of sorts about it. And for many of us, I think that doesn't feel possible based on our history, our family life, what we've seen so far, or even just because our business is growing too fast and it's gotten away from us. But it is completely possible to find. We just have to take a little time to look at it.
Well, like you said, as a client, as a friend, as a soul sister from another mister, I have told you since the day I met you that I can't imagine, and I did imagine it briefly, and it was the worst experience of my life, not having you in my financial world. Like, you have rocked it, changed it, clarified it, like motivated it. Like the whole breadth of capacity for which I can show up and do my service is a testament to your work and how you support behind what I'm capable of doing. So again, with great gratitude and love. If you are listening to this podcast, don't be shy in sharing your love with Liz. She loves to receive it. So comment and send emails and just like wash and rain down all of your feelings, thoughts, and ahas during this episode, because there are plenty. And thank you for letting me come on and get my feet wet in the podcast department as well as.
Thank you for coming and interviewing me. You did a great job. We will be putting links also. Tamara is relaunching her podcast in a couple of weeks, so we'll put links there. So if you liked her interview style, you can check out all the new things that is happening under Rebel Unicorns. I'm not sure what
Rebel Unicorns with Tamara Arnold, which you will be coming back on as a guest under this new umbrella as well.
So incestuous. Perfect.
True story. Hashtag truth.
Thanks for listening, everybody.